Jesus ate every single day of his life. Thousands of meals, and almost nobody asks what was actually on that plate. Today you're going to sit at his table. You'll see what was in front of him, what it tasted like, and what it cost to get there. None of this is invented. It comes from the ovens buried across Galilee, from the bones, from the salt pools excavated on the shore of the lake, and from what the people who were there wrote down. And all of it started long before sunrise. It's still dark. Inside a stone house, a woman sits on the floor. In front of her are two round basalt stones, and she turns the upper one against the lower one with both hands. The grain falls between them. She'll be doing this for about 3 hours. Not today, every day of her life. Because before anyone can eat bread, someone has to grind the grain. And there is no other way to do it. Jesus grew up in a house like that one, the son of a craftsman in a small village. Estimates range from about 400 people to 1,000, and none of them make Nazareth important. A place where tomorrow's bread depended on someone grinding tonight. So let's start there, with what Jesus ate almost every day of his life. In first century Galilee, bread didn't come with the meal. Bread was the meal. Between half and 2/3 of everything a person ate in a day came from grain. The Israeli archaeologist Magen Broshi estimated consumption at that time at around 200 kilos of grain per person, per year. More than half a kilo every single day for a lifetime. Everything else on the table, the oil, the olives, the fish when there was fish, was there to make the bread go down, not the other way around. And there were two kinds of bread. Wheat was ground finer. It came out paler, lighter, softer. That was the bread of priestly families, of merchants, of weddings. Barley was something else. Barley grew where wheat couldn't survive. It was harvested earlier, and it cost a fraction of the price. There's a verse in Revelation that is really a price list. For 1 denarius, a full day's wage for a laborer, you could buy 1 measure of wheat, or 3 of barley, 3 to 1. That was the distance between one family and another. Jesus wasn't eating wheat bread. He was eating the other one. Flat, dense, dark, about the size of a dinner plate. It was made by slapping the dough onto the inner wall of a clay oven called a tabun, heated with dry brush. The bread peeled off on its own within minutes, scorched with black marks and tasting of smoke. Now, with that in your head, go back to a scene you've heard your whole life. John chapter 6. 5,000 people sitting on the grass. Evening is coming and there's nothing to feed them. A boy comes up to the disciples with what he brought to eat. The text doesn't say 5 loaves. It says 5 barley loaves. That detail is there on purpose. To anyone hearing the story back then, it meant something immediate. That boy was poor. He was carrying poor people's bread. And what he had in his hands was almost certainly everything he was going to eat that day. Jesus took exactly that bread, the cheap one, the one for people with nothing, and fed the crowd with it. Not long after, in the synagogue at Capernaum, he said something that lands differently now. I am the bread of life. He wasn't thinking of bread in general, and the people listening knew exactly which bread he meant. There's one more thing about that bread, and this one isn't written in any text. It's in the teeth. When you grind grain between 2 stones, the stone wears down too. Tiny particles of basalt fell into the flour, baked into the bread, and ended up in people's mouths. The skeletons from that period show it. Teeth worn down to the root in people who hadn't reached 40. That was the price of daily bread. In Jesus' world, people didn't eat 3 times a day. They ate twice. The first came around midday, and it barely counted as a meal. A bite in the field or the workshop, without stopping work. yesterday's bread, water, maybe a few olives. The real meal came at the end of the day, when the work was done and the family came together. And that one was eaten lying down, not sitting. At proper meals, nobody used chairs. People reclined on cushions on the floor, propped on the left elbow, right hand free to reach the food. In the center, there were no individual plates. There was a bowl. Inside it, olive oil, and everyone tore their bread with their hands. It was never cut with a knife, and dipped it there, in the same bowl. Olive oil was everything in that house. It was the cooking fat. It was what let you preserve olives. It was the fuel in the lamp that lit the room. And it was medicine. When Jesus tells the parable of the Good Samaritan, the Samaritan treats the wounded man with oil and wine. A house without oil was a house in trouble. And that shared bowl explains a scene at the Last Supper that almost always gets read wrong. When Jesus says, "The one who dips his hand with me in the dish," he isn't pointing anyone out. Everyone was dipping in the same dish. That was normal. What made the line so heavy was something else. Sharing the bowl was the most intimate gesture in that culture. You didn't share it with a stranger. You shared it with your own. Jesus wasn't exposing an outsider. He was saying that the man who was going to hand him over was eating from his own plate. Bread and oil aren't enough to live on. You need protein. And in Jesus' life it came, above all, from the water. Jesus didn't base himself in Jerusalem. He based himself in Capernaum, a fishing village on the shore of the Sea of Galilee. Peter, Andrew, James, and John made their living from it before they followed him. On that same lake there was a town called Magdala. The Greeks called it Tarichaei, and that name comes from tarakos, salted fish. The town was literally named the Salting Factories. Excavations that began there in 2009 uncovered around 40 plaster-lined pools where fish from the lake were salted. This wasn't a household craft. It was an industry, and it exported across the empire. And that explains how people actually ate. Without refrigeration, fresh fish didn't travel. Only those who lived beside the water ate it fresh, and only the same day. For everyone else, fish meant salted sardine. Small, hard, salted to the limit so it would keep for months. Go back one last time to the boy with the 5 loaves. The text says he was also carrying 2 small fish. Not 2 fish, 2 small fish. Almost certainly 2 salted sardines. Barley bread and salted sardine. That's what a poor boy in Galilee carried to get through the day. And with that, Jesus fed 5,000 people. A poor boy gave away everything he had for that day. And it was enough for everyone. If that reached you, write it in the comments. Amen. Let's keep going. Jesus was criticized for the way he ate. It's in Matthew's Gospel in his own words. They said John the Baptist, who fasted in the desert, had a demon. And about him, who ate and drank with anyone, they said something else. Here is a glutton and a drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners. Nobody made that up later. That's what his contemporaries called him. Because Jesus ate with everybody. With tax collectors, with Pharisees. He invited himself to Zacchaeus' house. And in that culture, sitting down to eat with someone wasn't a social formality. It was a declaration that this person was one of yours. That's why who he shared a table with bothered people so much. So what was at those meals? The pot. Lentils, chickpeas, fava beans, simmered slowly for hours with garlic, onion and leek until they thickened. Cheap, filling. And a single pot could feed a family for days. That was the real protein for most people. To drink, cistern water, goat's milk, and wine, but never straight. Wine was always cut with water, 2 or 3 parts water to 1 of wine. Partly custom, partly because water alone wasn't always safe. Bread, stew, oil, watered wine. That was dinner. And meat? Meat barely appears in this story. And the reason is simple. In that world, an animal was worth far more alive than dead. A goat gave milk every day. A sheep gave wool every year for years. An ox pulled the plough. Killing it meant giving all of that up for a single meal. For a family like Jesus, meat reached the table maybe 5 or 6 times a year. Passover, a major feast. A wedding, if you were lucky. And this completely changes a parable he told himself. In the story of the prodigal son, the son comes home after burning through his entire inheritance. The father sees him coming from a distance, runs to him, and gives an order. Kill the fattened calf. Today that sounds like, let's make a nice dinner. To anyone listening to Jesus tell it, it was almost unthinkable. That father was handing over one of the family's most valuable assets, an animal worth years of work, for a son who had already spent his share. Jesus chose that example precisely because his audience knew what it cost. So far, all of this sounds manageable. Hard and repetitive, but manageable. And it was, as long as the land held up. What almost nobody sees is how thin that thread was. There were no reserves, nowhere to buy if your own harvest failed. Everything a family ate grew within a day's walk of the house or came out of the lake. One bad harvest, and there was no backup, and there was a year when it wasn't enough. Around the year 46 AD, a generation after Jesus, with many of his disciples still alive, Judea fell into a severe famine. The Jewish historian Flavius Josephus describes it in his Antiquities. The book of Acts records the same famine in chapter 11. 2 separate sources, written independently, documenting the same disaster. Josephus also records how it was relieved. A woman named Helena, queen mother of the kingdom of Adiabene, was in Jerusalem when the famine hit. She sent her servants to Alexandria to buy grain with her own money, and to Cyprus for cargoes of dried figs. And she distributed it to the people. That is the world in which Jesus taught people to pray, "Give us this day our daily bread." It wasn't a decorative phrase, it was a literal request, spoken by people who knew exactly what it was for the bread not to arrive. Bread. Today. Today's bread, because tomorrow's wasn't guaranteed. So, what did Jesus eat? Barley bread nearly every day of his life. Olive oil to dip it in. Stews of lentils, chickpeas and fava beans. Figs, grapes and dates in season. Fish from the lake, almost always salted. Wine cut with water. And meat 5 or 6 times a year when the year had been good. That was it. That was the table. And there's a scene near the very end of the Gospels that sums this story up better than any other. John chapter 21. The disciples have been out fishing all night and caught nothing. At dawn, they see someone standing on the shore. When they reach the beach, they find something waiting for them. A charcoal fire already burning with fish on it, and bread. And Jesus says to them, "Come and have breakfast. No temple, no crowd, no sermon. Fish from the same lake as always, grilled over the fire, and barley bread." Exactly the same meal they'd been sharing for 3 years. Of everything that could have ended up at the center of a faith, gold, fire, a king's crown, what stayed was that. Cheap bread, broken by hand and passed around. And that was exactly the point.